Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sound Stewardship's webinar on identity protection and cybersecurity. I am Derek Hensley, one of the wealth advisors at Sound Stewardship. Sound Stewardship is a financial planning and wealth management firm in Overland Park, Kansas. I have the pleasure of introducing Leland Blank as our speaker today. Detective Leland Blank has been with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department since 2002 and has been a detective since 2007, spending 10 years in the department's homicide unit. Since 2019, he has served as a task force officer with the FBI's Cyber Task Force in Kansas City. Detective Blank will present for around 40 minutes. Then we have some time at the end for a Q&A session. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen in that little menu bar to ask questions as they come up. Behind the scenes, my colleague Jonathan Harrison will help moderate the questions. So we'll try to get to as many as we can. And then, if others come up, we'll help answer those as we can, either in emails or whatnot. So Leland, it's great to have you joining us today to talk about a topic that I'm sure has or will impact many listening. Our hope for today is to create awareness of current scams and how to best protect against becoming a victim of identity theft. So thank you for taking some time out of your day to meet with us. It's greatly appreciated.
It's good to be here.
Awesome. So I'll hand it over to you there, and I'll mute and join back for the Q&A.
All right. Hello, my name is Leland Blank, and like he said, like Derek said, I've been with the police department for 20 years, and so I've gone from a patrol officer to a detective to being thrown into my current position, which was cybersecurity and investigating hacking, investigating scams, investigating all sorts of stuff that's out there. Both of my brothers are involved in the tech industry, and I have been friendly with tech throughout my life, but I did not know much coming into this spot other than it was going to be a challenge for me. So I have a kind of a take on it where there's things that I've gone through and experienced and learned about that I'm going to try to teach you about today the same way I learned about them coming into this 4 years ago, if that makes sense. I tell people all the time that or violent crime for a long time, a patrol officer, and this stuff that I've learned about scares me. So this is the type of stuff that concerns me, because when I meet with people, when I'm talking to my doctor, talking to my dentist, talking to people in my family, I find that they may have had a burglary that occurred for them, they were a victim of, or something like that, but with this stuff, with financial crimes and increasingly cyber crimes, they're often victims of this type of stuff. So it touches everyone. I guarantee you there's someone in your life that this has touched, and they've been a victim, whether they sometimes even know it or not sometimes. And so that's kind of where I'd like to start. So my goal of this presentation is, I was just kind of saying this already, but I think we need a better collective awareness of this stuff. I'm of the opinion that our laws are probably outdated when dealing with this, just because that's what the criminals do, is they know what the laws are, they know the line, they know what they can get away with and what they can't get away with. And as I talk about stuff, you'll be able to see that. In the past, there's a lot of shame for people that fall victim to this type of stuff, from companies to individuals to someone that may be a victim of this and you don't know it because they have kept it from you. And we got to stop having that attitude with this stuff. The credo in cybersecurity is, it's not if, but when. So it's not that this is not going to happen. It's that it is going to happen, and that we should be ready for it before it happens. And so I'll go through some preventive steps that you can take, and awareness about this type of stuff. So you'll know, hopefully in 2023, you'll have a updated attitude and awareness of this stuff that's happening right now, currently out on the internet and on our phones and on everything else. So I talked about increasing the amount of increasing cybercrime that's out there. So IC3 is the FBI complaint portal. So people can go on this site, ic3.gov, and they can file a report if they've fallen victim to any one of these crimes that I'm going to discuss. And I can tell you that this portal is used, if you do file a report there, somebody's probably not going to just take your case and have it solved in a week, but it does compile statistics and compiles data so that the FBI and other government agencies can look at this and follow the overall patterns of cybercrime and what's happening year by year. So the thing with this slide, and I just checked before I did this presentation, they have not updated the loss amount yet, but this goes from 2016 to 2020. And you can see that every year, the loss amount that is being tracked by IC3 complaints has gone up significantly every year. So in 2020, a $4.2 billion loss for reported cybercrime loss. There is a lot more losses than that aren't reported. We know that's out there, and we know that money is being obtained by criminals, and it's a lucrative avenue to make some easy money. I won't say easy, but lucrative avenue to make money through cybercrime. So the Financial Cybercrime Organization. These organizations, they are run like businesses. So they are run like a small business, sometimes even a large business. A lot of times they're even associated with different foreign governments. So in particular, the financial stuff, though, it's run like the slide is showing here. You've got a leader of the organization, and then you've got different people with different jobs to send this crime to us and throughout the world. So you've got money. So in particular here, you've got money mules, you've got traffic dealers, spammers, downloaders, people writing the software, people conducting the social engineering aspect of it, the call takers, the people that are actually making the phone calls, the people that are handling the money and all this stuff. And so what I often hear from a victim when I get a phone call here in Kansas City, and with my spot, I have multiple hats that I have to wear, and I get to talk to a lot of victims of this stuff, and it's unfortunate, but what I often hear is, let me know when you catch the guy. So I'll get a call from someone at the beginning of the week, and they will ask me, they will tell me what happened, and then by the end of the week, they're calling me and asking me if I've caught the guy yet. And I tell them from the beginning that's probably not going to happen, and because the way these things are run, it's run like a business. So you have to take down the whole business that's usually in a foreign country, and there are things that are being done, I can tell you, to combat this stuff, but it's difficult. And we have to work with our foreign partners and with private companies here in the United States to try to track these trends and try to stop this stuff. There are other things that happen where sometimes we can catch the guy. So I'm not saying that is not always the case, but it's it's honestly kind of rare, and takes a lot of people and a lot of hard work in the criminal justice system, both federally and local, to stop this stuff. So you guys are listening to this phone call. What about the little guy? That's what's most important to you. And to give you a kind of lay of the land of this stuff is a big part of my goal today. So scams are out there. You guys all get the emails, you get the text messages, you're getting the phone calls. The reason that you're getting all that stuff is because of social engineering. Social engineering is usually what has to occur first to start these scams. So I go after hackers. Well, they call it social hacking is what they call it. And so that's actually, they consider that a hack, is to getting someone to do something that they normally wouldn't do, through convincing them that this is going on when it's really not. So first one up there, data breaches. You should know, my dad believes that the U.S. Postal Service has sold his information off to someone. I cannot convince him that his information is out there on the internet in so many different ways at this point that it is it's hard to prevent your information from being out there. That's my personal opinion on it. A lot of companies that you have given information to have sold that information, or they themselves have had data breaches, whether through ransomware or hacking, where your information that you have given those companies has made its way into the hands of bad guys on the internet. And there's companies that probably have had data breaches that don't even know it. There's ones that have not disclosed those data breaches. And so my overall thing with that is to have the attitude that your stuff is probably out there, whether you know it or not. So when you get a text message or whatever, and they seem to have information about you, that information could come from so many different sources that it's hard to track down where it came from. The other thing is that these bad guys often have access to the same databases where that information is, that they can easily able to access your information to know more about you or to know identifiers about you. Family members I kind of discussed earlier. The elderly, the older people, people going to be my age in my 40s. There could be someone out there that you know that has fallen to victim of this, and you don't know about it. Update down there is just a reminder that updating your stuff, updating your computers, updating your cell phone, updating your apps, those updates are being sent out for a reason, and a lot of those updates have to do with the security of your device, security of your apps, security of your home computer. I encourage you, this can be 98% of the battle for a company, is to keep their stuff patched, keep everything updated, so you're not vulnerable to exploits that come out that the bad guys know about. So the bad guys are looking around for people that have not updated their stuff, and they take advantage of that, and they're able to get access. And the companies know this stuff. Microsoft, Apple, Android, Google, they're constantly updating their stuff for that reason, to patch stuff so bad guys can't take advantage of you. I have on here Jim Browning. He has some very entertaining stuff on YouTube. I would recommend watching. He actually himself, he's a British guy that is following this tech support scam stuff, or call center scam stuff. And his stuff is very entertaining. It explains how this stuff works. He actually has hacked into the call centers, and he has video, real-time video of him having conversations with them in India, in the Mideast, where a lot of these call centers are at. And it'll give you some good examples of like how this stuff works and what they're doing to socially engineer people. So I just discussed this. My next slide, I'm going over it again because it's very important. So social engineering, weakest part of any security system is you. That's true. They are trying to get you to do something that you normally wouldn't do. And that can come in so many different forms, from a phone call, text message, to an email. So this stuff, it used to be that a lot of these things were easy to spot. These emails that you got, these text messages that you received. The level of sophistication that is going to this stuff is only increasing. And so there is stuff that I have seen that myself, a cop for 20 years, that I would probably fall for, especially if they got me on the right day, if I was busy or had something else going on, or they already knew what it was, person that I was dealing with. And what I mean by that is they have some sort of, bad guy has some sort of access that you don't know about. So someone has actually got into your email and they are tracking what it is that you are doing. And this happens with companies. This happens with big companies where they are in the email system of a company and they're tracking what the CEO does in order to send out a crafted email within the organization to get someone to do something that they normally wouldn't. This kind of thing is filtering down to the individual, where the bad guys have hacked. They've hacked like a bank of emails. They've hacked a whole bunch of emails due to a vulnerability with an email carrier. And so they are doing mass searches for certain information. A lot of it has to do with cryptocurrency. We'll get into that later, but it could be anything. So they're watching you to see what you're doing, so they know when to best contact you to get you to do something. So it's just something to be aware of. And that's what I mean becoming increasingly advanced. Be careful what you put out there on the internet. Social media is its own beast, and a lot of people put a lot of information out there unknowingly that can be used in social engineering attacks later. And even if you yourself are not putting out information, someone in your family might be putting that information out about you. You put a picture of you on Facebook and it knows that they linked that that's you, that's Leland blank, and someone now has your face. So that goes back to, that's so much information out there that it's kind of hard to control at this point. Also, on social media, there are all sorts of criminals and lurkers that are doing data mining. So they are trying to get as much information as possible. Either they are looking at all that stuff and kind of sucking it all down and putting it in their own database, or they themselves are going out and kind of social engineering to gather as much information as possible. Examples of that are like, hey, what city were you born in? And they're asking questions, and people often comply just because they think it's a fun thing on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. So be careful about what you put out there on the internet. Check for old accounts and breaches. So old accounts is something that and some of this stuff is stuff I've had to look at. So old accounts, go back through and look and see what old accounts you have. And some of those accounts may have been breached. And that's something to be aware of. So to look at your old stuff, to track your old stuff and passwords and things like that, and old email addresses, just something to be aware of. I'm going to get a lot more I want to say about this old account stuff, but I'm going to get into that in the next couple of slides. Another part of social engineering, the way this kind of works a lot of times is that there's a sense of urgency in it. Something I like to tell people. So you'll get the text, you'll get the phone call, you will get notified, and they will tell you, you have to do this now. Otherwise you're going to lose this amount of money. I know you've got this account. I know this is your email address, but they have hacked that. So there's always a sense of urgency. That's kind of the biggest one. The reason that's on this slide is the urgency indicator is a big deal. And then passing off to a second handler. Once they get a person on the hook, they often suddenly you're talking to another person. I'm sorry, I'm getting so many emails. Sorry for the ding noise. So passwords. Passwords are constantly getting updated. I know it's a pain to have to change a lot of this stuff or keep adding stuff to the passwords that you already have. This is something that a lot of this on this slide is something that I was guilty of as far as passwords, and I'm better educated now in this stuff. So I personally use a password manager, and what a password manager is a password manager is a one-stop shop. It basically stores all your passwords. And so you'll have a bunch of different passwords, and so they can all be different. And a big mistake that being taken advantage of now and in the past is someone using the same password for every account. And when you do that, someone has access. If someone has access to a hack or to a data breach from another vendor, there are ways they can search the internet to see what other accounts that you have on the internet. And then they can use that same password or even a variation of that password if it's just a little bit off, and they're able to gain access to your other accounts. This type of thing can also happen if you're using the same passwords for your personal stuff and you're using the same passwords at work. If you're on LinkedIn like I am, or you're on your company's website and you don't know it, the bad guys will go to where you work and they will figure out the naming convention for your work stuff, and they will, if you have that same password or something similar, they will be able to log in and make access into your company, and then you're the one on the hook for the initial access into your company. So don't reuse passwords. I use a password manager personally, but that's a personal choice. Use complex passwords and passphrases. So it's not a short password with a bunch of different letters that don't make sense. Longer is actually better. So if you can use a phrase that you can remember or something like that, if you're not willing to use a password manager, or it's something you want to be able to remember, longer is better with a sentence, because a lot of the tools that the bad guys use are password crackers, I'm sorry. Password crackers. And the way those password crackers work is that they if it's a shorter password with less digits, it's easier for them to process that and eventually get access to your account. So longer is better. Don't share accounts or password with anyone, even your friends. I know that a lot of people share accounts and passwords. It's just not a good idea. And if you are going to share an account or a password with someone, make sure it's a different password than what you use for your other stuff. Always keep business and personal affairs separate. I said that earlier. So two-factor authentication or an authenticator app. This is if you don't remember anything else from today, remember this. Two-factor authentication, enabling that on your stuff is something that a lot of people do not do. And this will stop a lot of the problems that you can have in the future. And a lot of you guys are probably already doing this, or you've been forced into it with your financial accounts. I highly recommend using two-factor authentication or an authenticator app. An authenticator app is a separate app that is syncing up a code to that site. So you put that in when you enter your password, and then you go to your authenticator app, and then you enter the code that's presented to you. And so that way there's two different passwords basically in order to get into an account. So that's a big one. Two-factor authentication will help you out. So I have up at the top, just so you note this, have I been pwned.com. So that website is actually run by a security researcher, a cybersecurity researcher. And if you go on that site, and you can Google it too, have I been pwned, it will, and enter in your email address, your old email addresses, it will let you know if your account, if you had an account set up somewhere at a vendor, it will let you know if that information, if it's been located on the dark web, or your stuff has been compromised in the past. That one's pretty eye-opening to do, and I recommend doing that. I myself had a couple accounts that I didn't know had been the result of a leak. So this slide is a gift card at like a convenience store. So the way a lot of these scams work is that the ones for individuals is that they have you take money out of your bank account and have you go to the store and buy a gift card. And luckily this store put up a sign, which I think there should be laws saying that this sign is up in every store, that if you are here because someone on the phone is telling you to buy a gift card, you should stop right now. And the reason this slide is next is because they are moving away from gift card scams, and they're just going straight into cryptocurrency scams, or what most people know as Bitcoin is kind of what's in the news the most. Before I started this position, I was not a believer that cryptocurrency was actually a thing. It just kind of to me, it seemed like something that's sort of ridiculous. But same way, it's what value people have with it. It's the value that people put into it, if that makes sense. And so it's viable. It's actually worth something nowadays. And so it is also highly unregulated. So we're dealing with that in this country right now. The criminals know that it's unregulated, so they often have victims nowadays convert their cash or convert their money straight into cryptocurrency. So that's something that, especially in 2022 and 2023, this is the stuff that I'm seeing on a weekly basis, and people are getting convinced to either invest in cryptocurrency, or they are getting convinced to go to a lot of people don't know this, but there are actual cryptocurrency ATMs around town that you can put cash into and you can deposit money into. And once that money, usually the bad guys convince you to send that money directly to their cryptocurrency wallets. And once that money has hit the cryptocurrency system, the blockchain, they take that money and they have it. So it usually goes just straight to the foreign country. So it's not going through banks in the United States. It's going through straight to cryptocurrency and straight to foreign actors, foreign suspects. So if you know someone that's investing cryptocurrency, or they're insistent on being involved in cryptocurrency, I understand it and I get it, but it's something that they need to be very, very careful with. The bad guys are going after this stuff hot and heavy. They are, as I discussed before on that last slide, the two-factor authentication. They are bypassing two-factor authentication to get into people's cryptocurrency accounts in order to drain people's life savings is what I've seen on my end of things. So with this stuff, I tell people to stay away from it. I tell a lot of the victims I talk to not get involved with this stuff because it's unregulated, and there's no laws and no backing for a lot of this stuff. And once it's gone, it a lot of times it's gone for good. So this is sort of an awareness slide, and I deal with a lot of ransomware. Ransomware is rampant right now, whether you know it or not. We've all been affected by ransomware, whether we know it or not. From hospitals, large businesses, small businesses, schools. And what ransomware is at a basic level is bad guys that get access, like I talked about before, through email and into companies, get on a system, and get onto a network, and they're able to shut that computer network down, and they're able to encrypt that network, and they hold the network ransom for the company. And a lot of companies end up having to pay this ransom because once their network is encrypted, their system is shut down. The Colonial Pipeline hack, if you guys have heard of that one was a big deal. And when we're talking about oil and we're talking about people being able to buy gas throughout the country, the amount of money that was being lost, and it's honestly probably worth paying the ransom to get the system back. This is something that we're dealing with. And so they also steal the data during this. And generally the answer to this stuff is robust backups within an organization. So having your information backed up and separate. And for the individual, there is individual ransomwares that are out there. I myself keep a backup of the data that I want to retain for myself. And I keep that data, I keep that hard drive separate from, I keep it offline. So it's back up your data and keep it offline. So that way, if this is something that happens to you on a personal basis, you won't have to pay a ransom to get your stuff back. Business email compromise is also something I investigate. And basically what business email compromise is that within a company, and again, this is just an awareness for everyone, that this is something that is out there and goes on. Hackers get onto a business's system, they track the email, they see who is making the payments for the company, and then they take over those emails, they take over that email account, and they socially engineer the people to convince them to send the money to a new payment place or a new payment account. So they act either as the company or they act as the outside vendor that company is paying to, and they tell them, hey, we changed our bank accounts, if you could now start sending our money to this account. And then sometimes those companies will do that, and it's not caught until like 3 months later or even 6 months later, when the legit company is supposed to be receiving the money, no longer receives the money. But on this slide, we're talking about, there's money mules is on here, and that's not something I've covered up to this point. A money mule is someone typically in the United States who is either knowingly or unknowingly moving money for these bad guys that are often overseas. So a lot of elderly people are money mules. They fall victim to this, and I consider them victims, not bad guys. And it can be anything from romance scams to they've been socially engineered to set up accounts in order to get these illicit funds, these illegal funds into their accounts, and then that money is transferred out of their accounts overseas. There are knowing money mules throughout the country that do this stuff knowingly. And there's ways through bank accounts where this stuff can be stopped as long as it's caught early on. But as I've said before, they seem to be moving more and more into the cryptocurrency realm because it's just easier to get the money out of this country faster. This slide is just kind of another awareness slide. So all of these incidents are things that I did not know about before I started this position. And each of these topics, Stuxnet, Ukraine power grid attack back in 2015, 2017, NotPetya, Solar Winds hack, and the Colonial Pipeline attack. All of these are interesting topics that are out there. There's books, I think, written about all of them that you can find. And it'll kind of give you a idea of what's out there and kind of what's going on. And the term that's been used and thrown around is cyber war. And there's critiques on whether or not that is an appropriate term or not, but it will kind of open your eyes about this stuff. And even if you just read the Wikipedia page on this stuff today and go through this stuff, it'll give you an idea of kind of how things have changed in our lifetimes. So this is kind of a scary slide, but it's just an example of the lengths that hackers will go to. This article is about hackers getting children's data from elementary schools or from schools, and then either moving that data to the dark web, to the criminal parts of the internet, or holding that data hostage and demanding payment to not release it, stuff like that. That's just the kind of stuff that's out there. And I see a lot of bad stuff. So I've kind of, not to scare you, but it's out there. And the lengths that criminals will go to sometimes is pretty astonishing. So this slide is something that I saw recently, and it's from the current director of CISA, which is a agency that's within Homeland Security, and their mission is cybersecurity of our country and cybersecurity of companies and of the government, but it also concerned with us as individuals. And this quote is kind of accurate in what I've seen in my short time doing this. And she basically is saying, Jen Easterly is her name, and she's saying that kind of right now this is all on us, kind of seemingly, and not necessarily on the companies that are kind of can be the cause of these problems sometimes. And so she's saying that we've accepted that cyber safety is your job and mine, and not necessarily the companies that are best equipped to do something. It's just something I sort of agree with, and something I want to leave you with as I kind of conclude things here. I'm always surprised about how I can fill 40 minutes with seemingly nothing, but I think it's good. I think it's good information.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you for that. And so I know we have questions coming in, and so, but yeah, that's a lot of good information, and And I'll get the questions read off here. All right. So yeah, first question that came through was, are there scams associated with Zelle or Venmo? Are you seeing that pretty rampant, or what's your experience with that?
Not those so much in particular that I've seen. Those two would probably be a vector of a bigger scam. Those two vendors honestly are actually, I think, kind of good as far as catching that stuff.
Okay.
I use those. I use both of those personally. They seem to like to use ones that Cash App is one that gets used a lot.
Okay.
The crypto is what I'm seeing a lot of, cryptocurrency. But any of those accounts or any of those apps can be used if someone's being socially engineered to deposit money.
All right. And how would you say, like, for someone to use those apps safely, is it mostly just knowing who's on the other end and only doing it at that point? Like
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And so that business email compromise that I talked about, the way to prevent that, and the way we tell companies, and even I have friends that own companies that run small businesses, is that there should be a phone call person to person every time.
Mm-hmm.
You should know that person on the other end that you're talking to, and that's the best way to prevent. If you're going to move a lot of money, you should be careful with that stuff.
Yeah, I've noticed on like Facebook groups, there's Facebook Marketplace, and then there's also deals that are made in Facebook groups where, oh, hey, it's either memorabilia or household items. They're like, hey, this is up for discussion. I'm asking for 200 or something like that. Notice a lot of people on there and saying, hey, watch out for this profile. They're scamming people. Asking for a deposit is kind of a red flag when you're doing deals on social media, is what I've kind of seen. Is that something you've seen as well? Is if someone's asking for a deposit up front and you've never met them before, probably a red flag.
If someone tells you they work on an oil tanker or something in the ocean, it's usually or that you're not gonna be able to get a hold of me for 2 weeks.
Right.
Just stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just think about it before, and like discuss it with someone else. Just like a second set of ears before you do something.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. And so another question is regarding ransomware. Do you have thoughts on using sites like Carbonite for personal data backups versus your own separate hard drive?
I've not had much experience with Carbonite, but any sort of backup is better than no backup.
Okay.
I got friends and family that think the cloud is completely safe, and I can tell you that that's not necessarily the case. The cloud is just someone else's computer somewhere else, is what we say. So I mean, and I get two-factor authentication to get in that cloud, and like with the password manager, there was, I get them mixed up, but there was recently a high-profile hack of one of the password manager companies.
LastPass, I think.
LastPass
through recently. Yep.
And so, if that's not the password manager I use, but if my password manager got hacked, I have confidence that the company, because that's what they do, is that they would notify their customers of that, and you would know, oh, I have to change all of my passwords, which is a pain, but that kind of thing. Yeah.
And so, on password managers, I know LastPass got compromised, but in general, if someone's not using a password manager and they're wanting to get started, what should they be looking for in a password manager? Is it, the paid version versus the free version, or, are some better than others?
I use a paid version. I think it's like $35 a year.
Yeah.
I would be a little, I have not had much experience with the free versions. I'd be a little leery of the free versions.
Yeah.
And even like I don't know if Apple has it yet, but I know Google has their own kind of version of password storage where you can store your stuff. I would I wouldn't feel bad about using Google's or Apple's or whoever's, because again, their brand is their reputation.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. And then,
anything is
sorry.
better than using the same password on every site.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my message.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether that's a little book you're writing out all these long password phrases, longer is better. I got that. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And so can you remind us, who, say we fall victim to identity theft or cyber attack, like, who do we contact? Like, where do we start once we're a victim?
So if you do become a victim of this stuff, ic3.gov
Okay.
is the best place. I like for people to file police reports on it just so it's on record. And like I said before, it doesn't mean we're gonna catch the person, but at least it's on record there. Monitoring your credit, that's something you guys preach, and monitoring your accounts. That's something I didn't bring up. The biggest thing especially your financial accounts, I've used the recommendation using a separate email for financial accounts. I think that's a good idea. But monitoring those accounts and checking on those accounts, especially for older people, just everybody, is if you can catch something before it's been like a month or whatever, something I recommend.
Yeah. And another question came through, how early should you check your credit history for your children?
Yeah. I don't have a great answer for that one. It's not something I've dealt with too much. I would say probably as early as you can.
Yeah.
Now I think about it, I've been contacted by people whose kids' social security number gets stolen, or they're just guessing on a social security number and it matches up to someone's kid or something like that. So that's, I would say, probably as early as you can to check that stuff.
Yeah. And then do you see facial recognition as an effective deterrent? We talked about dual factor, but just speak into that a little bit.
A good question. Yes, I would say. Coming into this, like the cryptocurrency stuff, I really wasn't a believer in facial recognition, but I've since kind of been proven wrong, where I've seen that stuff work and be viable.
Yeah. And then so when we talked a little bit about password managers, but as a rule of thumb, how often should we be changing our passwords? Like if you're using, the password manager is going to make a robust one, but should we every time we log in change it, or just as prompted by the site? What would be your recommendation on changing passwords periodically?
So there's debate about that, about changing passwords, and a lot of what cybersecurity people like within companies have found is that when they make the employees change passwords a lot more often, they find that they use easier passwords. Okay. So, or they'll add stuff like winter of 2023, and that'll be their password. And that's actually a common one that gets guessed a lot by hackers. So I don't have a great answer for that, but changing it, I don't know, once a year or so is probably what I'd recommend. But the big thing is the longer password, two-factor authentication on your financial accounts at minimum is the big thing. And changing passwords kind of when you get around to it is probably what I'd recommend in that order.
And then on password managers, how do you feel about online companies like 1Password that vault stored passwords? Are they actually secure? Like, feel good about them? Like we said kind of earlier, it's like they're probably going to create a better password for you than you're going to on your own. generally
Yep.
speaking. But what
Yep.
are your thoughts on 1Password, vault, stored passwords and the security around that?
Yep. So I am for them, and I feel like what happened this year with LastPass, they're gonna notify their customers of a breach, because that's what the reputation hinges on. And that kind of goes back also to what I talked about there being data breaches out there. The big one that they use as an example that they have in the past is there's a breach of the Hilton point system, or the Hilton hotel system.
Okay.
And they were on their system for, I think, years before Hilton even knew, that's common, that someone's on there and a company's not picking up on it.
Yeah.
There's the Hilton breach. There's the Target breach was another big one. And I'm sorry if anyone works for those companies, I'm offending them. I'm just using those examples.
Yeah.
And so they try to reduce the amount of damage that is perceived by people. But so those places got hacked, and you may or may not know what information, if your information is out there. And so I equate that to these tech companies that only do password protectors.
Yeah.
So that's why I trust them. So that's just a
Yeah.
personal thing with me.
Yep. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Another thing, and we had talked briefly about this kind of offline on the webinar, but AI advancements, like Chat GPT, they made the news a lot lately. So how do you see the artificial intelligence movement change the threat of identity theft and cybersecurity?
So I haven't wrapped my brain around that fully. I've started to think about it a little bit. But I think that crafting the phishing emails, crafting the scam emails in real time and being able to do stuff much faster is probably a big advantage to them. I didn't realize that stuff they're going to be able to also make computer code with it. Yeah. That probably scares me more than the Chat GPT feature of it. Yeah.
It's soon to be gone are the days where you can see the email and spot out the English, the grammar issues. That's going to get cleaned up with a lot of that there.
Yep.
If they're not a native English speaker. So yeah. So you mentioned that a lot of the laws are not up to date to the current threat, the current environment we're in. What laws would you like to see changed?
So in other countries, they have mandatory reporting on a lot of this stuff for data breaches, and I think that we do already have things in place, and I think we're headed more and more to more legislation where that stuff has to be reported. Yeah, and we could start the debate on that about whether the government should know everything and not, but just more of a general feel with me. Is that this stuff is so prevalent in all of our lives now, and I don't fully think our brains can fully fathom like how important this stuff is, and kind of what it's doing to us, if for lack of a better term.
Hopefully the laws tend to be reactive, not always proactive, but hopefully they get kind of catching up there for sure. And so
I mean, and to bring up, I'll just say this, that the stuff being brought up with TikTok lately, I agree with a lot of it. TikTok it's owned by one of our adversaries. It's something that we should collectively be probably concerned with. No,
that's good. And so, well, I think that we got a lot of the questions asked here. And so, just thank you, Detective Blank, for your time today. We appreciate your work in this space and your expertise in this area there. So thank you for your time. And for the viewers, stay tuned. Sound Stewardship will send a follow-up email with additional resources on the topic. and we'll provide a link of this recorded webinar. So thank you all for joining us, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.